Hey, Sally. Tommy Gibbons here, professor of the course. Welcome to the class. Great to have you. Love that you're in this MJA cohort. I was part of the group of faculty that kind of planned that degree program. So I'm always like super stoked to now get the students who are in it. And I hope it's been good for you and that you have found like what you described in your intro video as like some like-minded people and some shared conviction about the centrality of the pursuit of justice for the Christian life. So anyway, glad you're in the class, glad you're in the program, and you've got some great work here in week one. I thought I'd start us off with a video reply and give you a little bit of my reaction to what you have written in these two forums. I think, first of all, what you say about who Israel is has got a lot of the right sort of emphases. Um, it is an ancestral community. It's a community that remembers who it comes from, you might say. And this is key to who the people is and both their memory and their hope, which are deeply intertwined with each other. So that's great. I think, as you've already highlighted in the second forum, something about who Israel is as an ancestral community that's kind of counterintuitive to people today, especially in the West, is not limited to people who are born into the family, as it were. So Jesus' genealogy, as you say, has got these four probably Gentile women in it. And this is, as you rightly note, a departure from a lot of other genealogies that are contemporary with Jesus in the Greco-Roman world, but not a departure from what we find in the Old Testament, First Chronicles to be specific, which is where I think part of this genealogy in Matthew is drawn from, which also includes women and it includes foreign women. And so what this shows us is that to be the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to know that God, the God of these ancestors as the God of the people, is not to make any claim about some genetic purity or something that somehow connects people in the present to the ancestors of the past. Instead, the Bible is able to sort of talk about Abrahamic ancestry in a way that accommodates the adoption of foreign people into the family across its entire history. And so that I think is just something important for us to observe, because often people will jump to the conclusion that ancient Israel was some kind of proto-racist society and that what Jesus did was really break things open. And that just wouldn't be true, I don't think, to the Bible as it is. And what I would want to emphasize about this genealogy, in terms of what it highlights about Israel's past, is that it is vindicating and fulfilling all kinds of strands of biblical memory, as opposed to doing something radically new or different. And so that's just one maybe highlight there. Along those same lines, you, again, I think rightly about the genealogy, note that it doesn't limit itself to, you know, people that we might want to hold up as ideals or heroes of the past. Instead, it seems to rather, without embarrassment, include some very awful people, to say nothing of like awful chapters in people's lives, right? Like it could have been that they just talked about the wife of Uriah as Bathsheba, but calling her the wife of Uriah not only recalls that Uriah is a Hittite, so there's Gentile associations there, but this was not David the king's shining moment. So anyway, all this goes to something, again, that I think is true of the genealogy, as you say, but it's also true of the biblical memory that the genealogy is evoking. and that is that it is not a story of the good guys. It's not sort of squeamish about including the way that the people has been formed uh, by all kinds of good people and bad people, and that this is actually part of who the people is and part of who God is. God unites God's self, God's name, to a people that is, messy, as opposed to um, only identifying God's self with some ideal. This is really crucial, I would say, as we move into the rest of the Gospel of Matthew. And if I can refer to it, the larger concern that you and others in the class have about the pursuit of justice. And that is that in Matthew, people, Christians, including commentators, some of whom I've assigned that I hope will criticize in the class, will often jump to the conclusion that what Jesus is about is separating the good people from the bad people, the faithful people from the unfaithful people, the obedient from the disobedient. And this becomes kind of the axe that our interpretation of Matthew has to grind in everything that we say about the story. And I really want us to resist that because, of course, the story delivers, you might say, measures of criticism towards certain characters or whatever. But nobody really emerges from the story unscathed. If anything, the most sort of reputable people, the most faithful people in the story are people who are given a relatively small part, the women who are custodians even of Jesus's body in the very end of the story. These are the only disciples of Jesus that don't desert Jesus, deny Jesus, or betray Jesus. But, the 12 so-called apostles of Jesus, they all turn their back on Jesus in the end. And so Jesus's life is not about separating good people from bad people and then identifying himself with the good people. It's about solidarity with the whole gamut of his people, all the lost sheep, you might say. And this is really important, I think, for our pursuit of justice today, because some of the injustices that we have inherited, that we are complicit in to this day, that we're trying to address, are, I would say, enabled by a certain mythology of what kind of society we are, of what kind of community we are. And there's all kinds of subtle policing that goes on that is hypocritical and sort of imposing on our church communities, on the wider society. This would be true of national culture in the US, some kind of moral ideal that supposedly represents what Christianity is about or what America is about or something like that. And then uses that ideal to basically continue all kinds of oppression and all kinds of lies, frankly, about where we come from, how we got here, what makes us tick, that kind of stuff. So we could go on about this, but hopefully you get my drift. You've pointed to something here in the genealogy that I hope you'll continue to pursue. I love what you said about the exile, for example. That's another, part of the past of Israel that could be sort of minimized as shameful. We're done with that now, and that's not the way this story works. So I hope we'll just be able to kind of sit with the way that this gospel, continuing some of the sort of trend that we see across biblical memory, is patient with the moral ambiguity of the community, with the failings of people. It doesn't condone them, but it doesn't sort of police them as, these people don't belong, sort of thing either. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from that, a lot that could inform our teaching as we draw from Matthew and the rest of the Bible with that, and a lot that can power the pursuit of justice if we begin to basically attack the false sort of mythology that frankly governs a lot of our church life and society today, with the wrong kind of sort of false ideals. So hope that's helpful. Thanks again, I think, for some really thoughtful responses here in week 1. And again, welcome to the class. I'm looking forward to working with you the rest of the term.